Right. Are we live on the computer too?
Yes, you are.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. I am Mixter Whispers. I'm one of the intuitive consultants over at Four of Like Kind. If you haven't checked us out, please do. I've got our other intuitive consultant, Sings with Owls, on the table today, and she's going to be my guinea pig for a self care session, kind of focusing on the hip, but largely a little check in for you guys too, just kind of tune into the body and see how you're feeling in this present moment. That's why we do self care, is so that we can be mindful right now and do what we need to do in this moment to better our futures and to better ourselves for ourselves and for the people that we care about. So I'm going to get started. I like to start with a check in on the energy for some of you who aren't familiar with that. You bring in a lot of energy from your environment. So if you're familiar with grounding, those currents of incoming and outgoing energy, is really important to keep those moving, keep things flowing in the body, so you're less likely to have weird health stuff like blood clots or stagnation and cancers. Just pain. Pain is a really big one that people want to avoid. It doesn't have to be a big name something for self care to benefit it. So we're going to start with some compressions, and this is really easy to do if you have a partner or a friend who's willing to take a minute with you. It's something you can do yourself. Just kind of put a little bit of pressure to start on whichever muscle group you're working on. So we're working on the legs here, focusing right now on the quads, encouraging that circulation to get going, get that lymph moving throughout the system. A lot of people get tight hips. I know Sings and I do. We've had children, so that's also compounded some of that tension buildup. A lot of times scar tissue and trauma can leave pain patterns in our bodies that we don't really want to deal with all the time. So take it one moment at a time and it will be less painful. This is another technique I like to do. It's just gently rocking. We've started those compressions. Now I'm getting things moving around the joints too. So starting near the knee right now, getting that flowing a little bit. Your hip, right hip's the one that's bugging you the most right now. So I'm going to start with some gentle rocking with Sings, get some of that hip movement going. Get it to naturally start moving in the socket itself before we start the stretch. That way it's warmed up a little bit. The body is kind of naturally pumping your blood and your lymph through that leg, where there's a lot of compression that can happen around that sciatic nerve especially. And just pulling really gently. I'm bracing right under the knee and kind of gently down near the ankle. You don't want to grip really hard right at the knee, because you don't want to compress the nerves that come through there. It's a very sensitive area. So just be gentle with that hand if you're doing this and following along at all. Just gently kind of brace yourself, gently pull at that leg, get that circulation starting to go. As far as like if you're doing this by yourself, a good way to get some of these muscles going is you can just start shaking, rock your leg by itself. And you can point the toes, flex those muscles in the calves a little bit more. So really simple ones you can do even just laying down in the bed to help warm up the hip in the morning. We're going to come up here and do a little bit more of an assisted stretch with Sings so that we can open up that hip pocket too. So again, holding right around the ankle and right under the knee. We're going to bring this one up. And you might have to adjust that knee once it comes up. Kind of trust your range of motion here. Term we use, range of motion. It might be really stiff if you're doing it first thing in the morning or right before bed. If you're first getting started on it. And we're thinking circles at the joints. You can start kind of catching, feel where that might be a little bit of pull in the muscle. And I'm going to start activating more of that deep stretch for Sings here.
Excuse me, I gotta slide by and give it to you.
And it's all about angles. It's not just an up and down kind of thing with the body. We're three-dimensional. So it might be that little like half centimeter to the side that does it, you know? I've noticed with massage, it's not always exactly where you think it is. Ooh, just a little bit more.
It pops like four things in the back of my hip. When when you first did the first step, like it literally popped right. But I've been trying to stretch it out. It just sometimes is resistant.
Those things, what I'd like you to do is just practice bringing that hip up as if you were doing this in the bed in the morning to wake up. And exactly, this is exactly what you're looking for to do if you're trying to do this for yourself. Get that little bit of traction from your arms, pull that in. And this is something you can do waking up. I've actually started doing some of my self-care routine in the bed to help warm up my body while I'm still under the covers because I like to nest a little bit. Sometimes it's hard to make that first step, but if I can make that first step in the bed, like get into child's pose under the covers and open my hips. Do cat cow pose. That's a really good one to help wake up the spine. Another good one. It's a really good time to like you can do circles at the ankle. I just got a really nice pop doing that one. I drive a lot, so if you're in the car, you can get a lot of tension, especially on that right side hip too, where a lot of us tend to get it anyways. Very right side oriented kind of culture that we're in at the moment, very action oriented. We're trying to find that balance with the intuitive too by tuning into the body and finding where those flow spots might be stagnant. So hips tend to be a really big one. It's kind of that balance center point for you as far as like physical balance and that metaphysical sense. Like you're trying to find that balance for your energy bodies as well. You have that the earth star, the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, all right in that lower area there that start impacting your hips a lot. So if you're noticing a lot of cramps kind of keeping you all tight and sore and your low back starts crunching in and you start going to hobgoblin, maybe it's time to just shake things out a little bit. See what we can do. Try not to get cut off in that second video there. I guess we'll do a nice quick run through on that left side for you, help even things out and see if there's any discrepancy. We already know that the right side is a little bit tighter for things, so we started with that one.
The newest thing is these muscles,
the quads.
Yeah.
So you're noticing the front muscles. And that can happen pretty commonly with tight hips too. A lot of people like to forget that the front body is just as impactful as the back body. So like we feel it in the low back a lot, but sometimes it's the front quads. You're definitely getting a little bit of that rolling on this left side, I'm noticing. And this might be something you notice if you're doing this at home. You get a compression on the spot and you feel it kind of roll, almost like this little thick band, like a spaghetti band or something. And it feels a little tighter than the rest of it. That's a good time to just take a deep breath in, both as the person giving and the person receiving. And let that oxygen come down into that muscle. Focus in that deep breath into that zone that you're working.
It's sort of a new sensation for me. Most of the time it always registers in my hips, behind my knees, in the back part, in the back. And today it's more, well, I mean, I feel it in all those areas, but it's also the front of my legs. So that added a little bit.
There's a lot of kind of cross the body chains of movement that happens. So the quads support a lot of the hip, and then that low back's kind of doing that cross motion into the torso. So you get a lot of different pull on the hips. You get these muscles come right up into that edge of the iliac crest on the front. But right in the front is where a lot of my tension lays. I get a lot of tendon tension, especially at the end of the day if I've been sitting a lot. That tends to tighten up that
feels
band.
So good. It's released a lot. I know it's still tension. Probably enough release that I can actually do my normal range of motion for myself.
And then another technique on here if you're comfortable with it. I know this can be intense if you've got a lot of surface nerve sensitivity. It's kind of more of a myofascial technique. You're kind of pinching and pulling up. So you're trying to loosen up these little bands of muscle fibers. If you're a non-vegetarian, if you eat meat, those gristly pieces, that thinner layer in between the meat that you cook and eat, that's fascia. That's stuff that holds your muscles together. And it can get, I was explaining to Kyrie earlier, it was getting, it can get crystalline. So it can become really hard and sharp in spots and be really painful. If you can get it warmed up and moving, it becomes more viscous, more liquid, more movement that way. I think that's why when the cold comes in, it tightens everything up. It makes it more like ice in there. It's very fluid based. It's more like, oh, let's go into that crystalline kind of form. And
That one right there, that's a nice spot.
so another really big band that gets a lot of tension is this IT band. You follow that curve of the hip, goes right down to the knee. It's holding together a lot of your back hamstring muscles and your front quad muscles. So those two really big leg muscle groups. Yeah, this is a nice one as far as self-care quick check-ins. You can tap, just kind of encourage motion up and down that IT band. You can do it on the top of the quads too, but IT gets really tight for a lot of people. You can also find a lot of foam rolling information out there. Take a foam roller to the side of the IT band is really popular. I like to take my tennis ball, do the same thing, smaller surface area. That's why I like the tennis ball as a self-care trick, because it's a little bit smaller surface area, which can get in between like the shoulder blades and back, up in the hips sometimes. It's really nice one too. You can take this stretch and add a tennis ball under your hips if you're comfortable with that. Get into the gluteal muscles, those deeper piriformis and stabilizing pelvic muscles. That can really help with some of that deeper sciatic. It could be
I know
really
you got
intense.
that one spot. I was like, okay, whew, I can breathe. I can breathe for a moment there.
And then, I guess you almost showed the stretch earlier when you were doing it yourself. There's a good stretch that I like called the figure 4.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with that one off the top of your head? Okay, so
Like a wrestling.
kind of.
I can do it on somebody.
Let's see. Let me have you
I
do
know that's right.
this leg because of the camera. We're gonna cross the ankle up to the knee, and that's the first position to try and get comfortable in there. Because I know if you're opening up that hip, it might take a second.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of these top quad muscles activated too, and then we're gonna take this leg, we're gonna bend it up, and then you're gonna hold behind the thigh. And then just take a few deep breaths and try and relax yourself into that stretch. Called the figure 4 because of the shape it makes with the hips there. This one I really like to do with that tennis ball under my hip to really get into that deep sciatic spot that can be really intense for people. That one definitely was a big one after my baby. This one helps really open up the low back too. Any feedback on that?
One? That one's really good. I feel like I need to do this even that out where I did the last time.
And this is important while you're going through this self-care journey. You're going to have a different flexibility than I am, a different flexibility level than Sings does. If you're just starting out, you might be able to do like 5% of where you see somebody on a video do, or you might be super flexible and be able to go 100% full into every stretch. Most of us are going to be somewhere in the middle. I know when I first started my self-care journey, I was kind of in between. I wasn't non-flexible, but I had my problem areas, like I had my posture issues. So I focused on those areas in my self-care routines. For Sings and I, we really focus on our hips because if we're feeling that hip lock up, by the end of the day, we just get grouchy, irritated. Some days I don't even want my partner to like just come in and like hug me because my hip can get so sensitive. So for me, it's a matter of maintaining balance for myself by like, okay, I know my hip's gonna be really sore by the end of the day. Let me stretch it out, do some hip circles, think circles at the joints. You can do simple things like circles around. You can do um, even just bending over and coming back up. Felt that crunch a lot of stuff across my hip. You might be somebody that has some severe back injury that might not be able to get into all of those poses right away. Just start where you are. That's the real thing with self care. Start
Be realistic with your own body.
exactly. And if the first step is movement, then don't listen to that voice that tells you to stay in that one spot or to just be like, oh, it won't help. It does. It really does. you know? I know if I sit like hang out too much in one spot, I can't see.
This
But
figure 4.
another quick check-in for the upper body while we're here. We're gonna let Sings stretch out her hip a little bit more before I do some after camera work on her. You think those circles at the wrists, really good one if you're on the computer a lot, if you drive a lot. I actually gave myself carpal tunnel before I got into massage therapy, so I got to learn a lot about self-care on taking care of that, and I don't have constant pain, inflammation, and tingling like I used to back in high school. Um, so I've managed to take my pain level from what I considered at the time a 10 down to, on my hand at least, a 2. So that one is a really good self-care maintenance on my end for ones I find success in. I like to do shoulder shrugs, another circle spot to focus in on. That one's really nice for opening up uh, all of this upper quadrant of your torso. Really great for people at the desk, computers. A lot of desk jobs. I would start hunching a lot, so I would do shoulder circles. Be aware of my spine. Take it from here. Bring that spine into alignment. You can see the visual difference on if I'm slouching or not, if I'm being mindful of that posture. Um, neck is a really good one for those circles too. I hear my neck crunching at me, telling me I need to stretch out a little bit more on my right side. So if you notice that, go ahead and bring some stretching into the side of the neck and play with the angles. You know your body better than I do across the screen right now. If your neck is twinging here and you can't get it past that point, don't push it. Take a deep breath, relax into it, and recenter yourself. Take it a little bit at a time. I like the I don't know if there's an official name for it, but the 1% method. Try and improve 1% at a time. Sometimes that can be a lot of 1% all at once. You can have a day where you feel like you jumped from 0 to 75, and then other days where it feels like that 1% is loading for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Right.
So think about it like that. Sometimes that loading bar doesn't go as fast as we want it to, but it's still going. So keep up in the moment. Don't give up. Be resilient. Find some inner strength. That's one I work on every day. And reach out to somebody that can help you if you're struggling. I had to do that a couple of different critical points in my life to help me keep moving forward on my self-care journey. And I encourage you, if you need to, please reach out. Sings and I are both certified life coaches now. I focus on the self-care journey from my perspective as a massage therapist and art therapist, and I guess arts management, and a lot of arts in the background. So I do a lot of the arts influence stuff too, and you do a shamanic art therapy,
Yeah.
as well as her really awesome spiritual year and a day work. If you aren't familiar with that, we'll be getting more info up on the website, but there's some already up there. That's something you can always reach out and start the conversation with us about. Our spiritual mentorships are intense. I've gone through a couple myself and they have transformed me. I did go with a transformation energy expert here.
Yes.
So please reach out. We're available over at foroflightkind.com. We also have a Facebook and Instagram platform going for that page, as well as our individual pages, which you might be seeing us on. Mixter Whispers on Facebook and Instagram, and Creatively Yours with Sings with Owls
Yes.
on Facebook, and Donna Austin on Instagram. So if you want a massage today, please book with us. We have some available. Hello, Casey. Let's see. Hello, Kyrie, joining our video. If you guys have any questions or want to see any specific kind of self-care topics brought up, especially on Self-Care Saturdays, please reach out. We'll be doing these series and getting more content up for you guys on awesome platforms like Spotify, YouTube, XM. Is that right?
No, it's Anchor FM.
Anchor FM. Thank you.
And then we have Spotify and Apple Podcast and Google Podcast.
So we've got a couple of cool content
And
spots
YouTube.
coming out.
So we're in several different places. So check us out and come talk to us about your healing journey.
Yes, it's definitely a journey, and some days are easier than others. So if you need help, again, please reach out. We would love to start that conversation. So, peace and blessings.
Guys.
Let's see if I can figure out how to turn this off. New platforms, right? End broadcast. That's the button we want. Bye, everyone.